Imagine for a moment that you're standing in front of a man who seems to have everything under control: his job, his daily routine, his relationships. Everything appears to be in order. But there's something untouched within him, something almost unreachable, his deepest emotional world. And even though he never says it out loud, you can feel it. There's a wall, a space no one has ever accessed. Not until someone comes along and disarms him, without even trying. It wasn't a kiss, it wasn't a promise. It was something more subtle, a gesture, a glance, an energy that can't be explained. From that moment, something inside him began to shift, something no one had ever reached before, something he himself didn't even realize he needed. Carl Jung once said that the human soul doesn't fall in love with the obvious, but with the symbolic. It doesn't seek certainty, it seeks reflection. And often what ignites that quiet fire within a person has no shape or name. It's a vibration, a frequency that touches the very place where he thought nothing was left. Have you ever felt like you touched someone's soul without even trying? Have you ever been surprised by how deeply it reached? Someone remembered you, even though you hadn't shared anything important. If something like that has ever happened to you, share it in the comments. That story might be more meaningful than you think. What's interesting is that when a man experiences something like this, he doesn't always show it. Sometimes he pulls away, becomes more rational, retreats into the familiar. But that doesn't mean it didn't affect him. It means he doesn't know what to do with what he felt. Because what touched him was beyond his control. It was an emotion that didn't ask for permission. A feeling that didn't fit into his mental framework. And that's the key. The male soul doesn't open through logic, but through something that confronts it with itself. With its emptiness, its suppressed desires, its longing for real connection. And that connection doesn't come from what a woman says or does. It comes from what she is, often without even realizing it. When a woman is at peace with herself, when she's not seeking approval, when she radiates her own truth, her presence becomes a kind of silent language. The male unconscious recognizes it instantly, even if the mind denies it in the moment. Because he's not falling in love with a person, but with a symbol. An unconscious promise of something he's been searching for, but never knew how to name. When Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, he was referring to the shared memories stored within all of us, even if we haven't consciously lived them. In a man's heart, there often live feminine archetypes that have followed him since childhood. The mother, the caretaker, the muse, the savior. These figures shape his emotional imagination, and he later projects them onto the women he meets. But there is one figure that goes beyond all of that. It's what Jung called the anima, the inner image of the feminine, defined not by roles but by energy. And when a man meets a woman who, without even knowing it, embodies this archetype, something ignites in his soul. It's not desire. It's not need. It's something deeper. It's as if, all of a sudden, he sees his own reflection in a mirror he never dared to look into. And the curious. The thing is, this woman often makes no effort at all. She doesn't try to seduce, doesn't chase, doesn't ask to be chosen. She simply is. She lives in herself. And this kind of authenticity, so rare, so disarming, is exactly what he comes face to face with. Because he can't dominate it. He can't predict it. He can't fit it into any familiar category. That's when the confusion begins. Because his mind tries to explain it, rationalize it, force it into old frameworks. But the soul doesn't work that way. The soul isn't guided by logic. It's guided by resonance. And when a woman radiates her true essence, it's not her who attracts the man. It's her essence that calls out to him. Have you ever felt that someone had a deep attachment to you, for no obvious reason? As if you were their embodiment of something, even you didn't fully understand. I'd love to read your story in the comments. Because experiences like this reveal just how powerful silent authenticity can be. The trouble begins when that attachment becomes uncomfortable, because he doesn't know how to handle what he's feeling. He He's not ready to be that open, that vulnerable. Because what's happening inside him isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's a call for his own transformation. And it's often at this point that many connections fall apart, before they've even had a chance to begin. Because the woman doesn't understand why he pulls away when everything seemed to be going so well. And he doesn't understand either. He doesn't know why he can't stay, why something inside him is pushing him to run. But what's really happening is that his inner world has been touched, in a way it never has before. And even if he doesn't realize it, this is the beginning of something much greater, the beginning of an awakening. At first glance it might seem that he just went on living as if nothing had happened, that it was just another encounter. But in truth, his unconscious was marked, not by the memory of the woman herself, but by what she symbolized, because what captivated him wasn't her beauty, wasn't her words or gestures, but the way she made him, without saying a word, look deep inside himself. Carl Jung once said that we are not what we show, but what we suppress. Often what a man represses most is his need to feel vulnerable, to surrender, to stop controlling. That's why when a woman appears who doesn't demand, doesn't beg, who needs nothing proven, he doesn't know what to do, because she doesn't represent a role in his life. She represents a portal into his shadow. And in that shadow lies everything he's denied within himself. His fragility, his tenderness, his fear of abandonment, his deep longing to be truly loved. And of course, it's terrifying, because no one ever taught him how to handle that he drifts through these waters. And no one ever told him that love isn't a power struggle. It's a sacred space for transformation. So what does he do? He defends himself. He pulls away. He convinces himself it wasn't that serious, and seeks comfort in the familiar, in the predictable. But at night, when silence falls and the masks come off, she returns, not as an image, but as a presence, a feeling he can't explain, but that stays alive within him, beating like a song he can't forget. And so begins an invisible, yet irreversible, process. The subconscious begins to stir, reminding him that there was something different about this woman, something that had nothing to do with possession, and everything to do with reflection, because she wasn't offering him a relationship. She was offering him a possibility, and without even realizing it, he let her go. Has it ever happened to you that someone pulled away without any clear reason, only to return later, as if they suddenly understood something, but too late? If so, I'd love for you to share your story in the comments, because sometimes these separations aren't rejections, they're pauses for understanding. And that kind of understanding doesn't come easily. It takes time, silence, and honesty. But when he finally begins to see clearly, he realizes that nothing can ever be the same, because now he knows that it wasn't her as a person that moved him, but what she revealed to him about himself. And that kind of imprint doesn't fade. A new stage begins. He starts searching for her in others. He won't admit it. He might not even realize it. But something inside him is comparing, remembering, projecting. And no one else is quite like her. Because he's not searching for a person. He's searching for a feeling. The feeling of serene presence, of emotional freedom, of simply being, without invading someone else's world, to love without asking, to be marked without making a sound. And then begins a subtle kind of obsession, not with her, but with what was lost when she left. Because deep down he knows that with her, he didn't just lose a relationship, he lost a chance to heal through connection. Now, everything feels a bit emptier, more superficial, because no one else awakens in him what she awakened, and that truth won't let him rest. Carl Jung believed that what we deny within ourselves eventually becomes our destiny. And what this man is denying isn't the memory of her, It's what she awakened in him. That's why he keeps seeing her. In the gestures of others. In certain words. In certain silences. Not because she's still around, but because her imprint continues to vibrate in his unconscious, like a living symbol, and the more he denies it, the stronger it becomes. Then comes the urge to return, to find her, to reclaim what he lost. But what he wants isn't her. It's what he. With her, he felt as if he only truly existed in her presence. More free, more vulnerable, more real. But that version of himself doesn't depend on her. It depends on his willingness to look within. Has anyone ever come to you and said they couldn't forget you, but couldn't explain why? That they searched for you with their body, but never did the work of the soul? If something like that has ever happened to you, share it in the comments, because so often we call it love, when in reality it's avoidance. Because in order for this man to truly love, it's not enough to simply want to feel again. He must dare to integrate what she represented, a mirror of his sleeping self, and admit that this part of him can no longer be ignored. If he finds the courage, a journey inward will begin. He will no longer chase this woman, no longer blame her, no longer try to possess her. Now he asks himself, what part of me awakened in her presence? What wound was exposed? What truth did she show me through her silence? And though that question hurts, it's the first step toward transformation, because he's no longer trying to fill the emptiness. He's trying to understand it. And in that search, without even realizing it, the process of individuation begins. At this stage, he no longer runs. Something inside him has shifted. He pauses. He observes. He allows himself to feel what he's been avoiding for so long. And even if he still doesn't know how to heal, at least he's no longer denying himself. And that in itself is a massive step, because true transformation doesn't happen when everything is understood. It happens when Carl Jung said that the process of individuation begins when the individual comes face to face with the unconscious and realizes that wholeness isn't found outside, but in the integration of the fragmented parts of the soul. And often, that integration begins with loss, with an absence that cannot be filled. A woman who, without even trying, left behind light instead of emptiness. He remembers the moments, the words she said, and the ones she didn't, the simple gestures, that now feel far more meaningful. And he realizes that, for the first time, someone truly. I saw him not as he appeared, not for his success, his strength, or his charisma, but for who he truly was, and that disarmed him. Because in a world where so many have learned to hide behind masks, being truly seen can feel almost unbearable. It's like standing naked before another soul. And yet, that's what they long for most. Have you ever felt that someone opened up to you, with nothing but your gaze? That without saying a word, you made someone face their truth? If something like that has ever happened in share your story in the comments. Because sometimes we don't realize the power we hold in our soul until someone reflects it back to us. That's when he begins to understand that what he needs to restore isn't her, but his connection with himself. She was the beginning, the trigger, the turning point. But now the work is his to do. He stops looking for someone to blame. He stops hoping the past will return. And slowly, he begins to ask himself new questions. Who am I without my defenses? What part of me have I never allowed to be seen? How can I become a whole person without trying to fill my emptiness with fleeting connections? And that honesty begins to change him. Maybe he still doesn't know how to love differently. Maybe he still stumbles. But he no longer loves out of need. He no longer searches from a place of lack. He's learning to be with himself, to choose himself, to listen to himself. And in that silence, she's still there, not as an absence, but as a symbol of the fact that he was once capable of feeling deeply, and is now finally allowing himself to understand. That in time, everything begins to heal. The urgency inside him is no longer sharp. The noise has quieted. The anxiety of needing to understand everything is slowly fading. And in its place, a new kind of calm begins to emerge. Not because the pain is gone, but because now the pain has meaning. It's no longer an open wound, but a sign that something is being restored from within. And in this process of reconstruction, he's no longer trying to replace what was lost. He's beginning to integrate, to understand that true love is not what he lost, but what he is capable of awakening, because now he understands. Jung said that we don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with the qualities of our own soul, that we see reflected in them. And that's exactly what happened. He didn't love her body, her smile, or her intellect. He loved her freedom, her groundedness, her authenticity, qualities he longed for, but didn't yet know how to awaken within himself. That's why it hurt so much. Because she was a reminder of everything he wasn't yet, but could become. And in that, there's something truly beautiful. There comes a time when he no longer wants her to return, not because he's forgotten her, but because he understands. Her role in his life has already been fulfilled. She wasn't the ending. She was the beginning, the threshold that led him back to his own soul. Have you ever felt that someone passed through your life, only to awaken you, and then disappeared, leaving behind a brief yet transformative presence? If so, share your story. It might be the reflection someone else needs to understand their own process. And in the midst of all this inner movement, he begins to truly live. Now he moves differently. He's no longer afraid. He no longer loves out of a need to be accepted. Now he observes himself, cares for himself, and allows himself to be vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, he discovers his true strength. Because love isn't control, isn't holding on, isn't convincing someone to stay. Love is diving fully into yourself and sharing that with someone who's done their own inner work too. And that changes everything. He begins to build relationships from a new place. More honest, more grounded, more human. And even though she is no longer there. But her energy remains, not as a shadow, but as a guide. Because what she left behind wasn't emptiness, but a new way of seeing life. A gaze that doesn't seek to possess, but to connect. A gaze that doesn't demand, but flows. A gaze that is nourished not by the fear of loss, but by the freedom to share. In that moment, he stopped fighting himself. He no longer blamed himself for what he didn't understand before. He no longer punished himself for not knowing how to love the way he now could. He had reached a deep understanding. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about being conscious. And that awareness, even if it came too late, changed him forever. Carl Jung said that what we accept in ourselves transforms us. And that's exactly what's happening. He began to accept his shadows, his emptiness, his contradictions. He no longer hides them. He embraces them. And through that, he becomes more human, more whole, more capable of truly loving. Now he sees clearly what he couldn't see before. This woman was not some unattainable ideal. She was a real woman. A woman who simply loved herself enough not to stay where she wasn't truly seen. And it was that self-love, that silent act of dignity, that left an unforgettable mark. Because in a world where so many confuse love with self-sacrifice, she embodied something revolutionary, the right to walk away, when staying would mean betraying herself. And though it hurt at the time, he now honors that. Have you ever felt pain? Because of your silence, your departure, your decision not to force someone to understand you wrongly. Have you ever been made to feel guilty for choosing yourself? If so, if you've ever gone through something like this, share your story. It might give strength to someone who's now facing a similar choice. Now he sees that his transformation would have been impossible if she had insisted, if she had stayed, if she had begged him to love her. It was her leaving that lit the inner fire that changed him, because no one truly awakens without first being shaken. And that awakening came through love. Quiet, steady, sincere love. That didn't need dramatic words or intense scenes. Just a softly closing door. A gentle goodbye. That gesture, born not of pride but of self-respect, changed him more than any promise ever could. Because in that act, he finally saw something he had never understood before. The deepest kind of love asks for nothing in return, and for that, it deserves reverence. And so, his way of loving changed. He no longer tries to impress. He no longer needs control. Now, he wants to share his truth, even if it's imperfect. And in that imperfection, he has become more real. And even if he never says it, even if she never knows, there lives in him a deep sense of gratitude, because she was never a wound. She was the key, the very key that unlocked the door to a new version of himself. Today, when he thinks of her, it no longer hurts the same way. There are no more unanswered questions, no more anxiety about endings. There is something else now, something quieter, something purer, as if he can finally look at that connection, not from a place of loss, but from a place of gratitude. Because she wasn't a mistake. She was a message, a spark, a teacher who didn't need to speak, because her very presence was a revelation. Carl Jung said that great encounters holds you back, but sets you free. Encounters in life don't happen by chance. They happen because the soul needs them to grow. And that meeting with her, though brief, though strange, though perhaps unfinished, was perfect. Because it split his life into before and after. He no longer looks for her in others, no longer projects her onto new faces. Now he carries her within, as a symbol, as a compass, as a presence that, without staying, returned him to his essence. This is the deepest form of true love, when it doesn't bind you, but frees you to become who you were always meant to be. Dominates you not by subduing you, but by revealing, transforming, reminding you of who you are, and who you can become. Maybe you, watching this, were that woman, the one who touched someone's soul, without even trying, the one who walked away quietly, but left behind an echo that will never fade, the one who, with dignity, pointed the way inward, yet felt misunderstood, lost, or even rejected. But maybe today, you'll understand that you were never forgotten. You were part of something whole, and that is power. Or maybe you're the man, waking up too late, who he begins to realize that what he lost wasn't just a relationship. It was the opportunity to rediscover himself. And if that's the case, let this message be a beacon for you. Because it doesn't matter how late the realization comes. It always arrives at the right moment, when the soul is ready. And now, I ask you from the bottom of my heart, have you ever felt that your energy changed someone, even without realizing it? Were you that presence that shook him, even if he couldn't explain it? Or the person who began to awaken after the loss? Share your story below. Maybe this is exactly what someone else needs to read today. If this content touched something inside you, if it felt like this message was speaking directly to your soul, I invite you to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, so we can continue this journey of self-discovery together. Every story holds a moment for reflection. Each one can become a seed for another heart. And if you felt that this message brought something meaningful into your life, you can support this channel by becoming a subscriber or clicking the super thanks button, which helps us create deeper and more transformative content. Thank you for being here, for allowing us to enter your inner world. We'll see you in the next video. And until then, keep returning to yourself.